we're going to look at viewport overlays. You could find it right here on a 3D viewport that you have for an editor. There's this icon here, show overlays. You could turn them on and off globally as a whole. Or if you notice, I turn them off, things like the text, the grid, and the guides for the axis go away. But we'll start right away with one of the things that are probably people would ask is, how do you show wireframe on a shaded object? Well, I'll add an object. We already have a cube there, but it's probably better to show an object that has more edges. So if I choose the monkey, I'll take it and move it by clicking on the moved tool on the side here, moving on one axis. And you'll see I move it to the side here. I can press the period on my numpad to focus on it. Now to show wireframe with the overlay here, I could click on the twirl down here and then click on wireframe. Now this is different than the wireframe over here, is because this just shows the wireframe not shaded. Whereas when you have it on an overlay, when the wireframe is turned on, all your other viewport shading modes will have the wireframe as well, including solid, material, preview here, and render. So you can visualize what it looks like here. What you could also do, if we go into the twirl down for the overlay, viewport overlays here, you could turn off the wireframe. You could turn things on, off as you need them. Like for example, the text up here to tell you what is the camera and what collection, what object selected. Like for example, I selected this object. I'm in collection cube. The collection is cube. The collection is called collection, and the object is cube. If I'm here, I'm in the collection, and it's called Suzanne. That's the object here. If I don't, and it also tells me the camera. So if I press 1 on my numerical pad, that's going to go to the front orthographic view. So I see that up here. And if I press that button, it will change it to perspective view, or you can press the 5 on your numerical keypad to change it, and it will tell me what's happening up here, what mode I'm in. If you don't want to see that, you could click the twirl down button and take off the text info. Same thing with the 3D cursor. The 3D cursor used to be the main way Blender would create objects based off the cursor. Now it's kind of like every other 3D software, it creates it in the center of the world, and you could transform it with these manipulators or transform gizmos. But so if you don't want to work with the 3D cursor, don't want to see it, you could click here and toggle off the 3D cursor. And a couple of other things like extras. What's considered an extra are objects that are in a scene that don't necessarily have a physical representation, meaning when you render it, you don't see it. So for example, the lights, you don't actually see the lights rendered out. So if you don't want to see them in the scene, you could click here and take off extras, and those will go away, visually at least. So, and there's other things that will show up that will matter later on, like for example, bones when you're doing armature or rigging a character. Another thing to point out, you'll notice here, right now I'm in a perspective mode where it's kind of like a free camera, I can move around. So in the overlay, if I click on this, grid is not selectable, but I could hide the floor. So in the floor is considered when you're in user perspective mode or user orthographic mode, when I press the 5 key on my new number pad or on my keyboard, or you can click it here. So when you're in the user mode, that's considered the floor. The grid on it is considered the floor, and you can toggle that on and off. Why that matters is because if I go into, let's say, another view, instead of a user, I go, let's say, I press 1 on my number pad on my keyboard to go to the front view. You'll still see the grid, even though I had floor off. But now the grid, turning on and off floor doesn't do anything. But if I turn the grid on and off, it would work. So if you're not in a user mode, the grid will be available to toggle on and off. But if you are in a user mode, so I could click here and just go back into a user mode and drag, the grid doesn't do anything. It's considered the floor, so you have to toggle on and off of the floor. And next to it, you have axes here, and this is just to show highlighting or accentuating the color of the axis, so you know which one is the x-axis, which would be red, which one will be the y-axis, which will be the green, and the origin. So if I turn on the z-axis, you'll see this is the z-axis up and down. I could turn them all off, so you don't see any of those like in other 3D packages, and that would be the default.
Thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.